Hardwired is a hard read. Walter John Williams, 1986. This is like the perfect example of the definitive super niche genre, 80s cyberpunk. One of the first truly punk cyberpunk works of fiction. I don't know where to begin. So, the biggest takeaways, you got really badass, well written action. It really doesn't hold back on showing the absolute darkness of reemerging historical patterns of tyranny, the few controlling the many, that sort of thing, weaponizing tech against illusions, AI, marketing, propaganda, fear tactics through tyrannical private military usage, essentially terrorism, posing as government, all the sort of things that our modern world is slowly turning into, sadly, which is the most paralyzingly scary and tragic contrast that makes this reading rather hard to stomach on an existential level. It's so bittersweet because it's the few escapist qualities of that classic nostalgic sense of 80s sci-fi, like the Rebel Alliance and the original Star Wars trilogy is really strong here, and by contrast to today, it's so sad because of course, um, well, I don't want to spoil it. So anyway, these characters aren't necessarily the good guys though, because they're super. They've had to do bad things to survive. So, society has failed them. There is no larger foundational moral constructs or traditions that have been upheld. Everything is a very medieval and carnally minded in spirit, and the bottom has fallen out. The center has not held, but it's not apocalyptic. It's it's just repeating history with greater technology and essentially just a very, very dark potential future. And so these characters don't even have proper uh, out loud dictated or understood methods of communication or understanding creeds. They live by thrills. They live to live in the moment while also escaping and having a sort of like I, in the eyes of people still consenting to loyalty to the governments of this particular future, they would essentially be seen as terrorists. The irony is that labels don't matter, because the good guys are the bad guys are the good guys, and that's the sort of thing that lingers with you, that makes you think long after you've read it. As corny and charmingly so as a lot of the storytelling is, not to mention the pace is bogged down by a whole lot of techno babble, which will probably not, meet the standards of no patience mashed potato brain modern consumers. Their patience level limits are going to wax thin and they might miss the point, which is sad. I don't think it's terribly dated though. I still think it has potential for rediscovery of modern audiences, it now being 40 years old, which is crazy to think about. Because by this point you have to read it as an alternate future, because some things just didn't evolve as this big imagination author thought, obviously. But it's fun if you for people interested in this niche. And people say cyberpunk was going to come back and become more of a fad, and it really didn't. It did for a short time in small bursts, with the recent huge video game 2077 and whatever. But it's this sort of thing that really still fascinates me, because it's such a unique world, as dark as it is. Similar to why I like 1984 so much. It doesn't give me a good feeling. It gives me a very depressive, soulless feeling. But the things I value most in fiction are mostly the ride, being immersed, and immersed to the point where when there is a small dash of heroism or something inspiring, or an ideal, true romance, for example, it's something to create a model or an archetype in your mind to try to fulfill in your life, something to strive for, something to believe in, like Don Quixote style. So, finding exciting unusual, well-constructed, believable worlds, even if there's some areas that aren't totally believable if you think too much about it. This really hits the nail on the head, if you know what I mean. So, or the nails on the hits the nails on the head. Whoa! Sorry about that. That was the corniest, worst joke I've ever made. So Hardwired is it's like you got wires all over your brain, and they're going in your eyes and they're coming out of your butthole. It's basically just giving you all this crazy energy that you can't apply to the real world, because the corporate government hive minds and the thought police, they don't want you to be an individual and rise like with the spirit of traditional American like rebel like independence that is emulated by the last mail carriers and cowboys, militia. They're going against the grain of society, and this is really like this epic feeling of like, okay, well, what is there to live for when your life can be terminated and never remembered in some obscure nonsense in the ingrained caste system of like people are eternally locked into forever. Well, all that was death is all around you anyway, so you might as well just kind of boldly nihilistically defy the consensus and dare to practice individuality and that's like almost a pseudo religious quality. And then it's like a justification for a potential nihilism that is weirdly inspiring, because it's really a story about freedom, and that'll stick with you. It really will. And then the action is great. I also forgot to say there's some really, really nasty sex that is just sadistically there's no reason for it to exist. It's just purely like weird incel sex, like that is hijacking just ideas about technology in the most perverse way you can imagine, that really sneaks up on you and kind of poisons the well of the experience if you don't let it be. Or maybe I'm just oversensitive, I don't know. But this is not for kids, and you should be well warned of it. It's very surprisingly sickening at times. But overall, Hardwired is a trip that is hard to talk about because it's so out there and it's so many things, and it's not. It doesn't always maintain attention because some of the plot and forward developments, like the mysteries that unfold, aren't necessarily mind blowing. It's more about intentionally like style over substance. It's very like B movie 80s action in spirit, but it just so happens that the world is well visualized because it's well constructed and thought out, and has something to say that is like borderline epic at times, but also so sad because of it made me sad, because it's just so harrowing, like what liberty is up against in the face of the endless like masses of non-thinking like NPC brain people that empower all the tyrants in the world. And so this is an accurate prediction of the future we're now living, which is awful, totally awful. So I give this book 9 out of 10, but it's something you got to be in the mood for, and it's definitely only going to appeal to people with big imaginations and big attention spans, and people that like thrills and like action and aren't afraid of the little gray areas of morality for, justifiable for the greater good and whatnot. And yes, these characters are flawed, it's storied, interesting. There's some cliches, but it's original enough to really sell itself. I didn't realize how big of an author that Walter John Williams actually was, and how many books he had available. But I'm starting to see his books everywhere, and so I want to read more. I really would like to read more books in this world, but I don't think he wrote any sequels in this world. I don't know, but I will definitely be reading more books by Walter John Williams in the future, because this book is really underrated and really original. I mean, it's as interesting as a world as many, cyberpunk or post-apocalyptic video games, and it's perfect for video games. It's extremely awesome and extremely like you could do anything with this setting, really, and the way he makes up technology and stuff. And so anyway, that's Hardwired. I'd probably give it a 9 out of 10. And badass. What can I say?